Hello, listeners. Welcome to episode 103 of Masters of the Forge. I'm glad you could make it because I'm only half here, so we need extra people to cut my slack. You know,
which half is here, if I may ask?
The sexy half.
That's always there. Whatever. So how you doing, Adam?
I'm okay. I'm putting together models. Actually getting some hobby progress today.
Woohoo!
And
that's pretty
fun.
nice.
Yeah, I've got... Let's see. I had a rhino built for my Sisters of Battle
a
while back. And so it's got the... what do you call it? Immolator top on it and everything.
Yeah.
And there's a Sister of Battle in there driving. So those ladies have been conscripted to the service of the Emperor's children.
Okay, that works.
So good for them. You know, I'm sure they don't mind. So I finished that up. I actually busted the top off of that because it was super glue and I didn't actually use a whole lot of glue on it.
Yeah.
So I snapped that off and I took the pit, like the gunnery pit from an Exorcist.
Yeah.
That was laying around in my collection and I glued that underneath and I put the little loading servitor in there.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm going to just call that my Havoc launcher for that Rhino.
Okay.
Yeah,
I'm looking at the picture on Facebook. I guess you're talking about the one that has what looks like a figure on the top.
Yeah.
It's a very intricate Rhino. It's a much more intricate Rhino.
Oh yeah. And it's got all the got a bunch of chaos pieces on it and stuff. It's pretty cool. So there's that, and I have another Rhino that I just built today that I had from the 10-man chaos plus Rhino kit that I got a while back. So that one's in there. And I built that kind of funky too, but it's like the one turret with the Havoc launcher on it. Mm-hmm. But then there's kind of no room for the Stormbolter, which is interesting. So I just glued one half of the combi bolter on one side of the missile launcher, and then I glued the combi flamer half on the other side.
Oh, okay.
Of the missile launcher, so that works. That's fine.
Are the hands still on there? If the hand is still on there, that makes more sense for chaos. Just make it really bloody.
The kit actually comes with a combi flamer.
Oh, okay.
For the Rhino. So I used the one that came with the kit.
Ah, okay.
Yeah. So then a week ago I bought a kit of Raptors / Warp Talons.
Yeah.
Yep. So because I just don't know. I'm still not sure what I'm doing with my Emperor's Children aside from what I've already got. I'm like, okay, Noise Marines, check. Lucius, check. Chosen, check.
Now what?
Yeah, now what? I mean, I'm pretty sure the Chosen are going to be delivered via Land Raider, which, you can either agree or disagree with the wisdom of that choice, but that's what's going to happen. And so I'll have that. But aside from that, I really don't know really what else to do. So I'm just randomly buying packs of stuff, I guess. So I have those Raptors who are pretty darn cool.
Yeah.
Actually, they're Warp Talons, because then I took the other bits like the chain swords and some of the other stuff, and Pat was buying a bunch of chaos stuff for his Plague Marines, for his what do you call them, Death Guard. He's like, I don't have free shipping yet. what do you need? I'm like, well, I don't know. He's like, do you need anything for your 1,000 Suns? I'm like, yeah, I could use some stuff. So he bought me 2 of the upgrade kits.
Yeah.
For the 1,000 Sun, or for the, not 1,000 Suns.
Children.
For the Emperor's Children. So
yeah.
I have 2 of the little upgrade kits. So it comes with a Blastmaster, a other weapon that's not a Blastmaster, and the Doom Siren.
Okay.
And it also comes with, like, each one comes with 2 heads, I think. 2 or 3 heads.
Mm-hmm.
And a power sword. So you can with those 2 upgrade kits, I was able to make 2 sergeants and 2 guys with, 4 total guys with noise weapons. So I kind of mix and match those heads and everything with some of the chaos bits I already had and a bunch of other stuff until I ended up with 12 additional noise marines.
Hey, that's not too bad.
Which with close combat weapons with chainswords, which I wanted more of those anyways because I felt it was very thematic for the Emperor's Children to be running with close combat weapons. So they're going to be hanging out. I'm going to be able to bulk out some squads with those guys. And I was able to put together 1 additional chosen with a plasma gun. And that's about it. I'm gonna spray these guys up and hopefully get to actually painting them very soon.
Cool.
Yeah, I was able to stretch those warp talons pretty well. They come with a bunch of extra bits. If you're gluing them as warp talons instead of raptors, you get a lot of extra stuff. And I did find out I have a bunch more. Oh, well, I guess I should say that a lot of the pieces I used were also like torsos and like legs are from the Mark IV armor from the Betrayal at Calth kits I have.
Ah, okay.
As well. But it's very chaosy and old school. Like Emperor's Children would have some pretty old school armor sets. So I think it makes sense for them.
Yeah.
So some of the shoulder pads look like some of the shoulder pads from the Warp Talons actually look very Emperor's Children-y. They have like speakers in them because they're screaming in like all scary. So I swapped some of those out for the noise marines I made, the generic noise marines I made, and I put just regular Mark IV shoulder pads on some of the arms of the Warp Talons. Because they already look pretty chaosy, so that won't really do much. Plus, I'll probably paint some crazy nonsense on them anyways.
Well, it is Emperor's Children.
Yeah, there's a lot you can get away with as far as paint is concerned. And after looking at what I've been doing with what I did with the first, like, kind of 5 test models I did for them, I feel like I can pull it off, with the rest of these guys, So that's fun. If the listeners have any ideas on additional stuff I can add to the army to make it Emperor's Children-y, I'm open to any suggestions you may have. But I do feel like, the Warp Talons are pretty cool. But I'm still super not sure. I think I definitely need to do a full squad of 35 cultists, though.
Yeah, that's a lot.
That is a lot of cultists.
But
only 3 command points to bring them back, so...
Oh, that does fit the Emperor's Children, or at least it does for, like, Horse Heresy era. So I'm sure it's going to fit just as well.
Well, the Emperor's Children have a lot of slaves, so
yeah.
I think that makes sense.
So, yeah.
I'm still working on the game room. It's going slow. And I got a bunch of free stuff from my coworker. She thought it was 40K, but it wasn't. It was a bunch of D&D stuff, but it was fine. There's some terrain there, and there was also a little like card box full of metal illithid.
Really?
So yeah, so I'm pretty sure I can come up with a fun thing to do with that.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Like I feel like there's something that I can do there. I'm just not sure what yet.
Gene Stealers comes to my mind, but that's just me.
Stuff like that. Like we'll see. But that's really what I've been up to. I've been doing a little bit of creative writing, but I don't. That's something I've been trying to do for years, and it's not 40K related. So,
you mentioned 27,000 words the other day.
Yeah, that's about where I'm at right now. So
just a wee bit.
That's more progress than I've ever made. So I'm pleased with it from that perspective. I just don't know if it's any good or not. So I'll probably put it out. I don't know what I'm going to do with it when it's done. I'm going to read through it and see how terrible it is when it's done.
Well, edit sober.
Yeah. Yeah, write drunk, edit sober. Is that what you said?
Yeah, that's I think Hemingway said that. That was his thing, which I'm assuming that means he's sobered up at some point. I don't know.
Right? Yeah. I think we all know he's full of crap because I don't think he was ever sober.
Yeah, that was kind of the issue. Just like that or he doesn't edit. Or he didn't edit. Yeah. Yeah, that's what editors are for. You write what you do, and then you give it to an editor, and they look at you like you're an idiot. Or, triple negatives don't work, kids. Sorry.
That's fantastic. Well, what have you been up to, Jason?
Okay, hobby progress. So I have I have a Contempt of Dread from the Calth box that I just hadn't finished building because I ended up buying 2 Calth boxes, so I had 2 dreads, but then I cannibalized the carries autocannon on one of them so that I could have a dual carries because I don't like fun and shooting things is amusing. So anyways, I've had that body I've had it for a while, and a friend of mine up in Denton, gave me new arms for it. So I built and magnetized those because the body already had the magnets in them. I base coated the dread. I mean, it just needs, honestly, right now it just needs details to be. That's just what's left. And I need to paint the arms, so I should be done with it by the time we record next. Okay. And then for giggles, I don't know who Giggles is, but whatever. I primed.
What? Just another scary clown?
Hey man, for some people they're all scary and whatever. I'm not going any farther down that route because I'll have to put the censor button on again. Let's see. I primed 27 Tomb King shields. You remember the shields that the Tomb King's skeletons had? Mm-hmm. A buddy of mine gave me a lot. I found 27 of them. Prime those, and then I think I have another little box of them somewhere in one of my other bits boxes. And I'd like to use them for boarding shields for breacher squads, but Forge World hasn't released rules for them in 40K yet. They haven't released Zone Mortalis rule set either, but I suspect both of those will be in the next Imperial Armor book, or at least I hope so. I also cleaned my hobby space today.
What?
Yeah, no kidding. I basically, I'll paint models, and normally I'll move them somewhere else, but I had just left a bunch of them on there. Like I had the Death Guard, and I had the Death Watch Assassins, and I had some random Raven Guard, and a bunch of Blood Ravens all on the table, and I couldn't, work. And so I went ahead and moved them all to a shelf, away from the cats. And so now I can see what's on my table, and that's kind of nice.
Excellent.
Yeah. All right. So purchase, because we do count purchases around here. I did order 2 new mics for a couple of things. One for the podcast, but 2 because of my profession. I need them. So yeah. Mm-hmm. So I bought those. That was pretty fun. They should be in Tuesday, hopefully. So. we'll see. I'll be using those mics going forward. The microphone I'm using now is... I know it's older than I am. I don't know how much older, but I suspect it's probably one of the first generation of this microphone. So I'm looking forward to using some different mics, having a better mic stand. And
okay, that's kind of sad though.
Oh, I'll still use it. I mean, it's quote unquote going into a nice retirement. It's still getting used. It's in a studio. It's not ever not getting used. It's just I'd like to use a different mic to do our recordings.
Mm-hmm.
In the last thing, I'm reading First Heretic from Aaron Dembski-Bowden. I started reading it just because of last week's episode. Well, for you guys, it'll be 2 weeks ago. But our Arcadia Stands episode, supposedly, Cadia shows up in that book. That's where the word bearers find things. So that's pretty much my hobby. Future hobby progress. I'm going to finish up this Contemptor Dread and a few other Raven Guard things, including those Primaris that you sent me. Thank you very much for those. And yeah,
you're doing me a favor.
Hey man, they're getting painted. Although you did send me the lieutenant with the bare head, which is why yeah.
I kept the other one. So I'm just totally to be honest though, I don't even know if he's getting painted.
Oh, well this one I'm painting him. I decided to go with Raven Guard because I can paint this guy like bone white and black out his eyes because that's Raven Guard and I'm good. Oh, listeners, I don't like painting eyes. There we go. So, but yeah, that's my hobby progress and my future hobby progress.
Awesome. So Primus has a new album out.
Really?
Get it. Yeah.
Ooh.
Yeah. And the disc is clear, so I don't know how they do that. That's weird.
Like you can actually it's transparent?
Yeah, I didn't think that was possible.
Interesting.
So I'm confused. Or maybe it's just, I don't know. Anyways, upcoming events. Don't forget about Armies on Parade this month. Battle of Salvation is October 6th through the 8th, and that's actually going to be gone by the time this uploads. So whatever. Headless Horseman RTT at our store. You should come and play and hang out with us. It's a fun time. You could dress up like whatever you want. Probably going to be a lot of clowns.
Anyone named Giggles?
That's October 21st. You can check out the Facebook page for Flipside Gaming or the Upstate Honor Guard, or just message me. I don't care. And we'll get you some tickets. Portal GT is October 28th to the 29th. I'll be there. A bunch of us will be there, actually. That's at the Portal in Connecticut. Du Bois GT, which is in central New York, November 17th through the 19th. A bunch of us are going to be there. I'm going to be there.
Cool.
And of course, we have the Golden Sprue Cup GT. Going to be at the Melvin Rhodes, American Legion, January 13th to the 14th. Please sign up, goldenspruecupgt.com. Please sign up and sign up early so that I don't have to weep into my pillow hoping people show up to my event. That'll be an ITC ranked GT, and if enough people show up, it'll be a major, so just please sign up. And that's it. This episode is about campaigns. Specifically, it's about the Fate of Konor campaign. Our store ran it. It was very exciting. I'm going to also talk about running campaigns at your local store. I know that the Independent Characters just did a multi-system campaign episode, but it's not going to stop me from continuing with our scheduled topics. So hopefully we can give different perspectives, different experiences with running campaigns.
Yeah.
Though, and to be honest, Carl and them, they kind of have a different group than we do.
That's
I know that Adon runs a lot of like they do a lot of stuff in FLGS, but they mainly do a lot of Garage Hammer and stuff. So I do think that we will have a slightly different perspective, which is nice on the topic. So, without further ado, let's move on to some commercials, Jason, and then start talking about... Oh, I should also say we have an interview with Zach from the
London GT,
which we had earlier today as well. So that was nice.
Yep.
All right. Sit tight.
Come here, boy. Get the ball. Come on, Max. Get the ball. Mom, Max won't get the ball. He's lazy.
I think I know why your Zote is being lazy, Jenny.
Why, Mom?
Because you forgot to feed him his Zotabix today.
Oh, no.
Oh, yes. Zotabix contains all the nutrients and random animal parts a growing Zote craves. It not only provides our Zote with the energy it needs to play with you and protect our home, but it also keeps its chitinous shell fresh and shiny.
Oh, boy. I'd better feed Max his Zotabix.
Yes, you had.
Zotabix is made in part from grade
Max,
A
time for
Astra
dinner.
Militarum post-engagement byproduct and is infused with 112 essential vitamins
No,
and
Max,
minerals
down.
harvested from your Zote's natural habitat, the finest desert deserts.
Ah!
Zotabix is available in any shopping center on worlds where Zotes are allowed or where the Imperium's inexorable influence has not yet reached. Greetings, mofos.
Are you out of George Dickel number 8, staring at a broken chess machine?
Don't want to spend the rest of the year tied to that couch?
Well, why don't you head on over to the 1 Hour a Night Facebook page and see what exciting stuff is going on there. It's a place to post all your daily progress in the hobby grind, as well as receive and give positive feedback. Also, there are usually a few interesting challenges going on.
That's right. All you have to do is search for 1 Hour a Night on Facebook. That's numeral 1 hour a night, all one word. Blood serum tests will be administered prior to approval.
Se til helvete og kom dere vekk. Det er ikke en bikkje, det er en slags ting. Den imiterer en bikkje, men det er ikke det. Kom dere vekk, idioter!
What he said. So, the Fate of Konor campaign. This was really cool. Everything is gone online, by the way. You can't find it on GW's site. All the pages have been taken down. However, if you do a Google search for each mission and stuff, you can actually get the Google cache for each one.
Yeah.
I don't want to say I'll give you a PDF with all the missions in it if you message me. I don't want to say that. Anyways, Galaxy in Flames Fate of Konor is an interesting global campaign that Games Workshop did in the summer of 2017. And it was a lot of fun. And we'll talk about kind of how to keep things like this fun a little bit later. But first, I want to go through and talk about the missions and stuff, talk about the narrative behind it, and kind of use that as a way to guide us into doing our own narrative campaigns and missions and stuff. So, let's delve into the lore, shall we?
Yes.
Ultramar burns. The putrid warbands of the Death Guard, led by the demon Primarch Mortarion, have launched a furious assault upon the Ultramarine Stellar Empire. This eruption of all-out war threatens to drown the stars themselves in bloodshed and terror. Well, that sounds delightful, doesn't it?
Hey, that sounds like a summer vacation right there. I was reading our notes earlier, and I was reading it out loud to see if I practice speaking it myself if I was going to speak. And I'm glad that you did, because I kept saying led by the demon Princess Mortarion. And I'm not using princess as a derogative. It just, that was the word that came to my mind when I saw the first three letters. Which,
So,
sorry.
Just to paraphrase here, Konor is kind of this seat of power. It's got a warp transit route through Macragge going through it. and it's got a lot of important key points within it that you can fight over. And Konor is being invaded by millions of cultists. There's starships blasting things. There are also Xenos races kind of pecking at the edges of the system. That's kind of a thing that you do when you're trying to involve multiple factions in a campaign. We'll talk more about that later. So let's move on to Mission 1. Jason, do you want to read the narrative for Mission 1?
Let me find Mission 1. Sorry for a second. Mission 1, Invasion. Astaramis has come under direct and heavy attack from the forces of Chaos. Yet it seems they are not the only threat, for alien forces of every ilk have been reported on the planet's surface. If this is true, their intentions as yet remain unclear. In response, mighty armies are mustered to defend the sprawling hive world, and battle is joined in earnest.
Whoop whoop.
Yeah, sounds fun.
Yeah, super fun. So they've set up this concept where, Imperium is the primary antagonist here.
Yeah.
So they are automatically the defender, and every mission it basically sets it up that way, that the Imperium is either the attacker or the defender, and the other opponent is the attacker. And if they're both Imperium, they roll off to determine who it is, and that's or if they're neither Imperium, they do that.
Yeah.
And this is how it was reported in the computer system on the online, and this is where things broke down for me, because I was really hoping to not have to. I knew I was going to have a lot of travel and stuff this summer.
Yeah.
And I wanted the store to be able to handle it without me being there, but the reporting system was a little difficult and it wasn't very robust.
Really? Okay.
Yeah, and it was confusing how to report as well.
Okay.
It wasn't clear how you were supposed to report the games. Instead of just saying, okay, having multiple fields, it said this person was Imperium, this person was Chaos or whatever, and these were the scores. Instead, it was this very vague and confusing setup. And a lot of people were getting it wrong. Numbers across the board were very mixed. Some stores reported only a few numbers. Some stores were reporting numbers in the hundreds because they weren't sure. Well, they weren't sure whether to report victory points or wins or losses or what. Okay. They weren't sure. Yeah, it was super confusing. So, aside from that, though, the mission was fun. You had the Defender was supposed to be the Imperium, and they had a 24-inch deployment zone up the kind of a Dawn of War setup, but the Defender's deployment zone was 24 inches in, where the Attacker's was 12, and you had 12 between you. So it was it could be a quick game, right?
Yeah. Yeah, if you had a heavy assault army, you could sit there right at one of the edges. And we had this
a bunch of the missions had this interesting first turn mechanic where here's what it says. The defender rolls a dice. On a roll of a 6, the defender can choose to take the first turn. Otherwise, the attacker has the first turn.
Okay.
So there was no seizing the initiative.
Right.
It was basically the defender seizing the initiative.
Yeah.
On a 6. But that also implied that you could spend a command point to reroll it because you are the defender and you are rolling the dice.
That is true. Yeah. Okay. That's
so
interesting. It's interesting how command points have changed things around so much.
Definitely. And you can think of those things when you're designing these missions too. Also keep a note that however, that in competitive play, those pre-game rolls are not allowed to be re-rolled using the command point re-roll stratagem. So keep that in mind. Your players may not understand that you intend for them to be able to do that. Also, the defender, only half of their units were deployed. Up to half of their units could be placed in reserve instead of on the battlefield as well.
Okay.
So they also had that, which is interesting. The victory conditions for this one were also pretty interesting. The attacker scored 1 point for each of their units with at least one model completely within the defender's deployment zone at the end of the battle. So I played this one against both Konor and Alexis, I think.
Yeah.
So they get points for the Chaos Forces got points for invading your deployment zone, which was again 24 inches deep.
Yeah.
Destroy any approach. Each of the attacker's units is destroyed. The defender scores 1 victory point. So if you for every Chaos unit you destroyed, you get a victory point.
Oh, okay.
And then also Slay the Warlord was in play for 1 point each.
All right.
So that was cool. I personally didn't think there was much of a, I guess you could say that Chaos had an advantage here. And I think Chaos did come out on top for this one because getting into position is a lot easier than killing units, I suppose.
Yeah.
So, especially with such a deep deployment zone, you really have to eradicate every model in order to succeed with this one.
Yeah, you'd have to go through and wipe a unit completely. Otherwise, they can go through and score a point there.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And, a lot of the Chaos players were running Death Guard. And Death Guard are super hard to kill.
Yeah. Yeah, that could be a bit of a problem.
We also had some special. Each of these missions came with two or more stratagems that you could use, and every week there was an additional stratagem you were allowed to use as well. That came when you, I think if you see, we just gave them away, but I think it was intended for people who bought bought something that week. For example, this is Astramus, right? I've got the card right here that they gave away. It's called Inspired Tactics. It was 2 command points. Use this stratagem at the start of the turn and add 3 inches to the range of any abilities on your Warlord's data sheet for the duration of the turn.
Okay.
So that's pretty cool, especially in this edition, which has so many aura abilities.
Right.
I thought that was really cool, and it was cool that they gave away these cards to people, and included them in the prize pack, along with some cool dice bags and fun little wristbands and stuff. I thought they really did a great job of making it fun for people.
That's good.
Yeah, and there was one of those every week. I don't have all of them on me, but that was pretty neat. And you were allowed to use those ones that were on the card throughout the campaign. So every week you had a new card that was added to the campaign.
Oh, nice. Okay.
Yeah, that was really cool. So, Jason, do you want to read the other 2 stratagems that they had for this week?
So, we have At the Double Quick, which was an attacker stratagem. Use this stratagem in the charge phase to charge with a friendly unit that advanced earlier in the turn. Ooh, I could think of fun stuff to do with that.
Yeah, especially since, for 1 command point, that's totally worth just the extra movement.
Yeah.
So, since, their victory condition was to invade your deployment zone.
Yeah.
For 2 command points, you could do Suppressing Fire for the defender. Use this stratagem immediately before firing Overwatch with a friendly unit in your opponent's charge phase, or to reroll all failed to hit rolls for that unit. In addition, your opponent must subtract 1 from their charge distance for each model in the charging unit that was slain by your unit's Overwatch fire. So that's super cool.
Yeah, that is pretty cool.
Yeah.
And okay, so before firing Overwatch, so that means you could actually reroll all failed hits in Overwatch.
Yeah, and then for every model you killed, they have -1 on their charge distance.
That could be fun with the Devastator squad, specifically one that had like heavy bolters or something like that.
Heavy bolters, tons of plasma.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh god, that could be a lot of fun. Rapid fire.
So also, this also shows some interesting inclusion of the regimental standard in the Konor campaign, and I hope they do this in future campaigns.
Yeah.
Because it was a great way to in the narrative, report on what's happening in the campaign. So it was basically a roving reporter that would report to the Imperium about what happened that week in the campaign. And it was really funny because, over time, this reporter was getting seriously screwed over as the campaign went forward, and the reporter, every retreat that the Imperium had to make, like, the Imperial commanders, the genius of the Imperial commanders have revealed themselves yet again as we tactically reposition.
We should.
It was really cute.
We should do an episode like that, similar to our what was the name of that episode we had with Brian?
Oh, Good Morning Imperium of Mankind.
Yeah, something like that. I like those episodes. I hope our listeners do, because I enjoyed doing sound effects for it. So yeah.
Yeah, it was super fun. So that's great. So let's talk about so that's really fun. And the first mission, I think, for your campaigns, you want them to be very movement based, in my opinion. There should be something that involves getting into position or infiltrating or deep striking or something, because that, I think, makes sense for an opening salvo in a campaign. Do you think that makes sense?
Oh yeah.
Okay.
I really do like the idea of every game you get an additional stratagem for playing that you can use throughout the campaign. That's actually something I really like. It's almost like getting free loot. Like, with some gaming groups, if you play in a tournament, they give you dice. Mm-hmm. As here's one die, here's another die, and it's just it's like swag. I mean, it isn't it is exactly swag.
Awesome. And yeah, we'll talk a little bit about ideas for your campaign in the next segment too. Yeah. So mission 2 is Seek and Destroy. The fighting on Konor has been fierce, yet through the valor and determination of those who tasked with defending the system's capital planet, the Imperium's forces have thus far endured. Elite warriors and armored walkers now scour the ruined industrial districts for pockets of surviving invaders as the stealth units encircle them and close in for the kill. So here's another interesting thing about this campaign. Each week, Games Workshop featured a specific unit type, and gave bonuses for using that unit type. And they wanted you to kind of buy that unit type as well, Yeah. So that was really cool, and the kind of the game rules focused on that too. Yeah. This one had a corners deployment zone. Chaos was the defender automatically, or if one wasn't chaos, yada yada. And for this one, the victory conditions were whichever player had the most victory points won, and you got victory points by destroying an enemy unit, and you score one additional victory point if the last model in the enemy unit was slain by a unit with a unmodified save characteristic of 2+ or 3+.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, so more elite models had a bonus here. And if Hold Your Ground was another objective, If at the end of the game the defender has any units with at least one model wholly within their deployment zone, they score 1 victory point. So you got a point for holding, the Imperium got a point for holding their side of the battlefield.
It's interesting.
And also Slay the Warlord was also in play. So they're basically focused on elite kind of kill teams fighting for supremacy.
Yeah, it looks like, I mean, it's more balanced, or not balanced, but it's more tilted towards Marines, essentially. Both Chaos Space Marines and regular Space Marines. Especially with the 3+.
Yeah. Yeah, in theory, I think it could work. However, I do think it might have been a little skewed because the armies that don't have 3+ saves are probably going to be at a kill point disadvantage anyways.
Yeah.
Right. So it was, but knowing the mission ahead of time, which is another important point.
And reading the mission details ahead of time.
Yeah. That meant that you could tailor your list for the mission.
Yeah. Okay.
But if you didn't do that, you're probably going to be at quite a disadvantage. Do you want to read the 2 strategies? Oh, no, that we had 3 stratagems for this one.
All right. So in this one, hold on. The page just turned. We have
Oh, sorry. I thought this was life after the cover save.
All right. Where was I? Sorry. First of all, Unstoppable Assault. So this is 1 command point, and it's an attacker stratagem. And you use this stratagem immediately before making a charge in the charge phase. Add 1 to the unit's charge distance and any saving throws that you make for them for the duration of the phase. That's pretty cool.
1 command point, no big deal.
Yeah, it's no big deal. Then we have, for 1 command point, Tighten the Noose. And we use the stratagem at the end of the movement phase before setting up an infantry unit from your army that arrived from reserve this turn. You can set that unit up anywhere wholly within 6 inches of any battlefield edge that is more than 9 inches away from any enemy models. Okay, so if your opponent doesn't have their back line secured, you could actually bring in from that. That could be pretty rough.
For 1 command point, you basically outflank the unit.
And if we're running a lot of elites, because that's what this is geared towards,
you should have plenty of command points to do that with. Yeah.
All right. Next, for 1 command point, we have Hunker Down, which is a defender stratagem. Use the stratagem when your opponent targets a unit from your army in their shooting phase. That unit gains the benefit of cover, plus 1 of their saving throws, for the duration of the phase. Note that this stratagem will have no effect on a unit that is already receiving the benefit of cover. Yeah, so you can't double down on that, but
basically
still,
going
nice.
to ground and open terrain. Yeah. So that's pretty cool. This one, like I said, it very much favors elite units, and again, definitely want to read missions, especially for campaigns like this. The game master is going to be coming up with a lot of special rules, and it behooves you to pay attention.
Yeah.
Next we have Hold the Line. So at this point, a terrible plague has left the glorious crop oceans of Nithamus as little more than a blackened sludge.
Gross.
Though all is not lost, while the vast factory crawlers yet survive. Their district-sized cargo holds packed with enough grain to feed the entire Konor system. However, an armored spearhead races towards one such leviathan and must be intercepted at all costs. So this was the vehicles week. This was a lot of fun. Imperium were the defender.
Oh, okay.
The battlefield The Defender got a 36-inch deployment zone. We're setting up hammer and anvil style.
Yeah.
So 36 inches, 18 inches of no man's land, and then the attacker's deployment zone was 12. Or sorry, another 18. 18, 18, 36. There was a... it was meant to be kind of this open field for the vehicles to kind of chase each other around in.
Right.
And they explain that in the mission. And that's another kind of point to make, right? Like by reading this and understanding why the rules are the way they are, there are other considerations like deployment special stuff and battlefield setup and all of that. And you have to kind of understand that going into the narrative game.
Right. This seems to what it's more for, I guess, vehicles and I guess bikes, too. I mean, this is really pushing the fast attack angle.
Yeah, do you want to go over the, like the victory conditions?
Oh, yeah. So, the victory conditions. At the end of the game, the player who has scored the most victory points wins a major victory. If both players have the same number of victory points, the game is a draw. Victory points are achieved for the following. Armored Spearhead. Each time the attacker destroys an enemy unit, they score 1 victory point. In addition, the attacker scores 1 victory point for each of their units that have moved off the battlefield via the exit route, and see breakthrough above, which explains that vehicles for the attackers need to go off of the far edge of the table. Or 2 victory points for each vehicle model that moved off the battlefield in this manner. Let me see. So you'd get 1 point for, fast attack like bikes or assault squads or something, but you'd get 2 points for each vehicle. So that Chaos Rhino, 2 points. Or,
right,
yeah.
or orc buggies, stuff
buggies,
like that
yeah.
would be very easy to get off.
Yeah, so, Crush the Foe. Each time the defender destroys an enemy unit, they score 1 victory point. The defender scores 1 additional victory point if the last model in the enemy unit was slain by an attack made by a friendly vehicle. Okay, so Land Raiders would be something good, or Wyverns, or, something that packs some punch.
Yeah.
And then Slay the Warlord, of course. So if the enemy Warlord has been slain during the battle, you score 1 victory point.
Right. And again, this is them using the rules of the campaign to focus on a specific unit type, which was, again, an interesting choice for the campaign. But really, helps them focus it on the business.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's what they're trying to do, is sell models, and it's business. That's how it goes.
Yeah. Yeah, so the stratagems also really focused on the vehicles. They use 1 command point, Armored Assault. Use it in the shooting phase to shoot from a vehicle in your army that advanced earlier in that turn. And it counts as not having moved. So that's pretty sweet.
Yeah.
2 or 3 command points, all power to the guns. Pick a vehicle from your army that did not move in the preceding movement phase. The cost in CPs depends on the wounds characteristic of the model you pick. So this is an interesting kind of...
yeah.
Yeah, the bigger the model, the more CP it would cost to shoot it.
Okay.
So that is pretty good. So it's 2 CP if the vehicle has 15 wounds or fewer on its profile, 3 CP otherwise. You can fire twice with that vehicle this phase, but must subtract 1 from all of its hit rolls when you do so.
Interesting. Okay.
So it's more expensive if it's a bigger vehicle.
Right.
And not only that, there's an additional penalty for using the stratagem. They really wanted to make sure that one wasn't too powerful.
Right, because that one could...
And that's yeah.
That one could get pretty crazy pretty quick. Imagine a Imperial Knight, that's double powering, especially if they have like a Gatling cannon or whatever. Yeah.
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 Resurgent Machine Spirit for 1 command point. Pick a vehicle. For the duration of the turn, use the characteristics of the top line of the damage chart, regardless of the number of wounds it has remaining.
Oh, awesome. Yeah.
Yeah, that's really cool. And that's actually one of the current Mechanicum stratagems.
Oh, really? I like that. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, it makes sense for them, right?
Mm-hmm. Definitely. That's
awesome.
That's something that is perfectly logical.
Right?
Yeah.
All right, we only have 2 more missions to go through before we move on to our general discussion. You want to read the narrative for Mission 4?
Mission 4, Into the Hellmouth. Wow, that sounds pleasant. All right.
It's a Buffy reference.
Is it? Okay. I'm a heretic. Sorry. All right. Venator skies burn and demons pour freely from beyond the veil. The planet's surface now resembling little more than a blasted hellscape. Yet into this apocalyptic nightmare, the Imperium's finest charge onwards, determined to sever the warp breaches from their source. Wow.
Mm-hmm. So I didn't plan this mission. I had a bunch of visiting and stuff to do this summer. So this has the same deployment zone as the first one. Defenders is 24 inches in, then a 12, then the attackers is 12. This came with the sustained assault rules.
Yeah. From
the main rule book. So they are. I think it's on a 6 they come back, and then except for troops choices, which are a 4+ to come back. So models keep on coming. Yeah. So the victory conditions were objective based. This is the first one that's truly objective based, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah, so...
it is. I don't remember any of them before.
The defenders set up 3 objective markers anywhere in their territory. So their 24-inch deployment zone, they set up 3 objectives. At the end of the game, each objective is worth 3 victory points to a player who controls it. And then we had Slay the Warlord. Very simple. Very simple. And I think the Imperium actually came out on top with this one, if I recall correctly.
Okay.
But they were I believe, the attacker. So that might be why they actually were able to infiltrate the deployment zones and take those objectives. I believe, if I recall correctly, but it was a long time ago.
Was this
at any rate?
Was this the Psyker week? As I'm reading through the stratagems,
I believe. Why don't you go ahead and read the first one?
All right. So our first stratagem is for the attacker. 1 command point: Psychic Equilibrium. Use this stratagem when a friendly Psyker suffers perils of the warp. The Psyker calms their mind at the last moment and does not suffer D3 mortal wounds as normal. Yeah, I think this was that week.
Yeah.
Yeah. Our next up is Teleport Strike for 1 command point, and that's from the attacker's stratagem as well. Use the stratagem during deployment. You can set up a single infantry unit in a teleportation chamber instead of placing on the battlefield. At the end of any of your movement phases, this unit can teleport into battle. Set up anywhere on the battlefield that is more than 9 inches away from any enemy models. Okay.
Nice.
So that's cool. It's got deep, well, whatever you want to call the new deep strike, analog.
Then we have Empiric Distance for 1 command point for the defender. Use this stratagem in the enemy movement phase immediately after they set up a unit as reinforcements or as part of a sustained assault mission rules. Roll a d6 for each model in the unit. For each roll of a 6, the unit suffers a mortal wound. Ooh. This is good for this, the chaos forces, because they're trying desperately to keep the Imperium out of their deployment zone. So if you're getting free, this is the same stratagem. The stratagem has the same rules as the booby trap stratagem, I think it's called, from the main rule book. So you're kind of penalizing them for bringing on, maybe wait for a powerful unit to come on, like a unit that you're really worried about. Wait to see if that comes on, and then use this against that unit.
Okay.
and it's the defender who gets to roll the dice too. Mm-hmm. So you can use your command points to re-roll those dice if you really want a unit to take wounds.
Well, that's, in a large horde army, they could take some abuse pretty quick. You know? I mean, not like a lot of abuse. It's only 18, well, on a roll of 1 of 6, or 6 of 6. So.
Yeah.
But still, that's not too bad. Mission 5, Countdown to Destruction, which is not a Guns N' Roses tune, just so we're all on the same page. All right. Despite a valiant attempt to contain the invading forces, and with the walking pox running amok amongst the rapidly dwindling population of Drinthal, Imperial High Command has taken the desperate decision to overcharge the fusion core of Terebral Station Sigma. All loyalist forces must fight their way to freedom or perish amid the planet's destruction. Well, that sounds fun.
Delightful.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Let's just overcharge the fusion core. What's the worst that can happen, right?
So I played this one against Ben's, I played with this one with my Imperium forces, like my Space Marines and Imperial Knights against Ben's Death Guard.
Yeah.
This was super duper fun. Okay. So I was the attacker, it's the Imperium. You set up 12 inches in. Then you had a 12-inch no man's land. Then the defender had 24 inches to set up.
Okay, so same as the first mission.
Yeah. So I set up my army, and he set up his. And you have to get your army off the other side.
Okay. It has the exit route on the page. Yeah.
Yep. So the victory conditions are a third. As long as a third of your power level gets off the battlefield, you win.
Oh, cool.
A major victory. Now, this is, where we start talking about explaining your intent to the players.
Yeah.
So again, we'll talk more about that later. We're just setting up right now. We're just talking about the missions and stuff and setting up for the conversation we're going to have later about how to run one of these campaigns. But we had a lot of fun doing this running firefight from one side of the table to the other, because it wasn't like the other missions where you could set up kind of heavy support units to kind of support the units that you had chosen to try to get off the battlefield.
Yeah.
Because behind you, the ground was collapsing. So at the end of the turn, all models within 6 inches of your battlefield edge, the attacker, are slain.
Wow.
Because the ground behind them is collapsing. So we were actually removing terrain as well. So as the battlefield was destroyed, we were just removing models and terrain. It was amazing. Every battle round, remove 6 inches. It was super duper fun. Unless it had the fly special rule, in which case they were unaffected.
Was this the flyer week also, or was that, or did they even have a flyer week?
I don't think they had a flyer week.
Okay.
Yeah, I forget what week this was, but this was so much fun playing this mission. I really, really enjoyed it.
Yeah.
I believe I lost. I don't really remember who won and who lost, but we definitely had only 12 inches of battlefield left at the end of the game, and it came down to the wire. It came down to a run roll, basically, of whether I could get the guy off the battlefield or not. And I think it was my librarian actually hanging out at the edge of the battlefild. You know what? I think it was a flyer mission.
Yeah.
So I think we can say that it really favored models that could fly, because you didn't, you weren't crushed by the collapsing ground, and it was easier to get off the battlefield.
Yeah. Although, as I'm reading through the victory conditions, I think, let me see, hold on. It mentioned that you...
Oh, okay. Yeah,
flyers.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right. I remember that now. Yeah, they don't count for points for escaping, right?
Do not count towards the combined power ranking of the units that escaped.
Right.
So,
okay, cool. So that would have been not fair.
Yeah, because
neither one of us did that anyways.
Yeah.
So, and this explains, that's part of explaining like the fairness of the missions.
Yeah,
and stuff
that is
like
good.
That.
That is a nice balance. That is pretty cool.
Mm-hmm. So for 2 command points, the attacker could do a forced march. You got within 6 inches of your warlord, you could roll 3 dice for advancing instead of 1.
Oh wow! Okay.
Well, you pick the highest. You don't
Yeah.
actually get like a billion inches.
Yeah.
For 3 command points, you get aerial dominance. At the end of your movement phase, return a flyer that was destroyed earlier in battle to play, which is fine because they really aren't worth points anyways.
That's true.
So it's a very interesting mechanic.
And it's
I think it's better to give those kinds of benefits to things that matter least, I guess. Yeah. It's an interesting way to think about it.
Yeah.
And then another defender stratagem is the delaying tactics. Use this stratagem in your opponent's movement phase if your opponent attempts to fall back with one of their units. Mm-hmm. Roll a 2d6 if the roll is less than the unit's leadership, they can fall back as normal. If the roll is equal to or higher than their leadership, they cannot fall back this turn.
Interesting. Okay.
So forcing people to kind of pass a leadership check.
Yeah.
To not fall back. So that was pretty cool.
Keep them stuck in. Okay.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So again, super fun mission stratagems, really specialized for that mission.
Yeah.
All right. You want to read the lore for the last mission of the campaign?
Oh my. All right. Mission 6. Death of a World. By the artifice of the Death Guard, and in accordance with their Daemon Primarch's fiendish plan, the Death World of Lobos is hurtling its way through the Konor system and threatens to leave nothing but devastation in its wake. The Imperial forces must stop at nothing to prevent this outcome by destroying Lobos itself, lest the realm of Eltamar be dealt a blow from which it may never recover. Ah, more fun. Now we're just going to throw a death world at you. Hi. Yeah.
So for this one, the Imperium is the defender, and they get the 24-inch deep deployment zone. Again, I was on holiday during this mission, so I was not a part of it. But there was I believe a objective in the center of the battlefield.
Mm-hmm.
The battlefield should feature as many Death World Forests terrain pieces as possible to represent the heavily forested nature of the planet's surface. Oh yes, this was the super heavy / terrain week.
Okay.
The defender then sets up 3 objective markers. The objective markers can be located anywhere in their territory as long as the center of each is more than 12 from the center of any other objective marker, or 6 inches from the battlefield edge. So the defender has 3 objectives in their deployment zone.
Well, the nice thing is that with 8th edition, you can't run your Land Raider over a tree and then throw a tread.
Yeah, that's true. That's true, yes. The defender rolls a d6. On a 6, they can choose to take the first turn. Otherwise, the attacker has the first turn. Again, kind of a fake seize the initiative roll.
I think every mission's had that.
Yeah. Yep. This was a destroy the objective mission rather than a hold the objective mission. So if at the end of any turn the attacker has more models within 3 inches of a center of an objective marker than the defender, they successfully destroy that objective marker and remove that objective marker from the battlefield. Okay, note they don't say hold the objective.
Okay.
So objective secured has no meaning here.
Okay. All right. So they don't even have to. Okay, they don't have to shoot up.
That would have given a very strong Like, it would have been a very strong benefit to the attacker because at this point, I believe at this point, only the Space Marines Codex had objectives secured.
Okay. Yeah, I guess that would keep things from getting tipped over to one army over another. I do really like the missions where you're supposed to destroy objectives, because it does change around the way you play. You have to kind of be a little more cagey.
Right.
And figure out, because, you drop there, you're there within, 3 inches? That means you're stuck there within 3 inches. And that means you could be out in, the middle of nothing, and all of a sudden your opponent can light you up without having too difficult of a time. You and I did that one game where we had to destroy the objectives. Although you set up the objectives so that, what was it, on certain rolls that... Oh, wait, when it was destroyed, it actually had was it a vortex grenade profile? Yeah.
Broken with it, yeah. Yep.
Yeah, that was fun. That was like, well, what am I going to destroy it with? With those guys, they're expendable. Bye-bye.
Well, and a dreadnought.
Yeah, that's true, and a dreadnought.
Which, whatever. You'll just loot another one. So for this one, they had special rule called Hostile World Spirit. So if you're an Eldar player and you bring those Death World forests and stuff to the campaign, their range was increased and stuff like that, which is pretty cool. The victory conditions were based on destroying the objectives, obviously.
Yeah.
You had stratagems that allowed you to destroy the terrain if you wanted. They had incendiary grenades for 2 command points, which is really funny. Plague Horde. It allowed you to summon demons onto the battlefield for command points, which is an interesting way of doing summoning, to be honest.
Yeah.
That might be a fun kind of thing that you might be able to carry over into your other games of 40K.
That's true.
And stuff that I'd kind of like to see happen, because, spending points for your summoned monsters is pretty cool. But I think I like the use of command points better. Well,
it allows some other interesting narratives to occur. Like, for instance, I always play Psychers in all of my lists. Mm-hmm. And, what's to say that these Psychers might not have the most pure of Imperial intentions? Because there are times that Psychers do fall to chaos. If you don't believe me, go watch or go play all of the Dawn of War games. Especially that first one, and this could be something more fun to bring along. I think that could be interesting. Yep. Then the last stratagem is Blessing of Nurgle, and use the stratagem before rolling to see if a unit from your army suffers any mortal wounds from a Death World Forest terrain piece. That unit does not suffer any mortal wounds. That's interesting. I don't know. What exactly are the Death Forest stuff? I have not seen
I
that.
Don't know, but I kind of don't like this mission because a lot of the stuff is kind of ignore the special stuff.
Yeah.
It's like, well, then what's the point, right? So it's fun. I think it's fun to have the special terrain rules. I kind of don't like the idea of let's just ignore the terrain rules with the stratagems, but at least it's not. So, like, the incendiary grenades are fun, but that removes them forever.
Yeah.
I don't think that's cool. But the last one, it's a command point, and it's only for that one instance of damage from the thing. So I think that's pretty fine. I don't mind that too much.
Yeah.
Because it's only one instance of damage. So there's that. Maybe, I don't know. Anyways, so those are the missions, and it's driving me crazy to go through the missions and not kind of simultaneously discuss some of the notes that we have for narrative gaming. So why don't we just cut it off here? The Though I do have one thing I'd like to bring up. I love the I really love the regimental standard for Mission 6 because it kind of reveals that the reporter is now working for the Alpha Legion.
Oh, that's awesome. That's fun.
Yeah. Finally, you may have noticed more Adeptus Astartes around than usual. You've been lucky enough to be reinforced by a few experimental new companies of the Ultramarines. You'll recognize them by their blue-green armor, especially colored to camouflage them against the jungle, of course, and their scaly cloaks, made from the mutant enemies of the Imperium they hate so much. Don't trouble your commissar if you spot such a space marine moving around at night into restricted areas. As the Emperor's finest warriors, they have absolute permission to go wherever they went, or wherever they want, and do as they please, and you should endeavor to follow any commands they give. Footnote, you are reminded that challenging a member of the Adeptus Astartes in the pursuit of his duties is punishable by flogging, assuming you survive, which isn't likely. I hope to see you on the battlefield soon, guardsmen, or if you hear a cry of "For the Emperor" in the thick of the firefight, you'll know me, and my regiment are right behind you. Sounds like excellent news, guardsmen. We're sure any of you would be lucky to be supported by a man with the courage and conviction of Officer Drake. So there's a picture of a character with like a Hydra tattoo on his face. It is fantastic. Also, like, there's another footnote. Where was it? It was really. Greeting at the beginning. It's like, greetings, Garmin. It has been deemed tactically prudent to allow Druithal to fall into the hands of the archenemy while we consolidate our forces elsewhere. And the footnote is, please note that talk suggesting the campaign is somehow a fix or that the results were decided ahead of time are seditious and will be treated with as such. Because people were complaining, like there was some kind of the map was going towards chaos.
Yeah.
In Mission 5, but it was declared a victory for the Imperium.
Oh, okay. Wow.
Everybody were saying that the campaign was fixed by GW. Which maybe it was, maybe it wasn't, whatever. It was just really funny. And so they brought it up in the actual Konor War Diaries on the website. So that was just great.
Yeah.
That was just the best.
That is pretty good.
Anyways, so now that we've talked about the missions, we kind of see what it was like to go through the missions. Why don't we talk about narrative gaming and campaigns in your store? So let's take a break, listen to some commercials, and come back and talk about that.
Hello, everyone. The Masters of the Forge is now a proud member of the NPC, the Narrative Podcast Consortium. Our aim is to inspire your hobby through the rich lore of the 41st millennium. If you enjoy our podcast, then make sure to check out these other awesome shows, where you can get coverage on campaigns, Black Library, and all kinds of general topics of the 40K background.
The NGC 40K podcast also provides in-depth campaign coverage, audio dramas, and free-flowing narrative campaign creation.
The Adeptus Terra podcast also features in-depth discussions of the lore and commentary on the hobby.
Oh, and sexy English voices.
Oh, yeah.
The Masters of the Forge brings the world of 40K to life on your tabletop, with discussion on the lore, backed up by narrative-themed rules and battle reports.
Of course, this is only a fraction of the topics covered by the podcasts of the NPC. Please tune in to find out more.
Oi! After an hard day's shopping, I like to head down to the pub and enjoy a good brew with me mates. Shopping humans all day is hard smelly work, so's I likes to top myself up with something nice. Chopper body spray is not just a treat for you, it's a treat for the whole crew. Now available in Green Apple Grunt, Illinois After Dark, And oops, don't press that fragrances. Chopper body spray, don't make me axe you twice.
Hey, Masters of the Forge listeners, are you looking to expand your Warhammer 40,000 gaming group?
Do you want to start a 40k club in your area?
Do you want the people you attract to be like-minded mofos?
Do you want to advertise your YouTube channel?
Or even attract more subscribers to your hobby blog or online community?
Then what better way than to advertise on the Masters of the Forge podcast?
All we ask of you is that you email us at mastersoftheforge@gmail.com or message us on Facebook with a full text of your advertisement, including the region in which you live and any contact information people can use to get a hold of you.
We will have one of our many tech servitors read your advertisement on the air. We promise not to make fun of you.
Though we can't always predict the actions of our servitors, you really can't find good help these days.
No, you can't. Alrighty. So, like I said, all through that, I was like losing my mind because I want to talk about a bunch of this stuff.
Yeah.
Let's talk about the most important thing is, and that's the people who are involved in this this thing. We have the players and the GM. So, first of all, not all players are gonna want to do narrative gaming.
Yeah, that is true.
At least not in the way that kind of GW has presented the way they do narrative gaming. A lot of players think that matched play is more fun because of the restrictions. Some of the players, I know at least at our store, some of the players preferred to play with the restrictions because they felt that it was more fair. Mm-hmm. And to play without the restrictions was less fun and even more narrative. And I can only say that this is true if you think of narrative gaming from a do exactly as you please at all times to win the game perspective. And I think that that's kind of an unfair way of looking at it. And I understand that some folks have a way of looking at the way the rules are set out as that's the way you play the rules and that's the way you play the game. And, you always play the game that way, the way the rules are presented. And when it comes to narrative gaming, that's not always the case. When it comes to narrative gaming, you play in the way that's the most fun for you. And that's not always, following the rules strictly, right?
Yeah.
And correct me if I'm wrong here, or if I'm misinterpreting it. Like that's kind of the way 6th edition was. 6th edition and 7th edition was play the game the way you want to play it. Don't worry about, exactly as the rules are written. You can change those however you want. And I think people pushed back against that because you could really, like, if you played by the rules, if you played, literally by the rules in 6th and 7th edition, it could get crazy.
Yeah. Yeah, there's some armies that were powered in interesting ways. I'm being, as diplomatic as possible without using the B word.
Yeah. Well, and even without, and now we have matched play, which is great, and it sets those guidelines for us. It makes that social contract for us, and that's fine. And all of these ways of playing set that social contract for us, right? And, for a player in a narrative game where the restrictions are lax, you have to think about the other player, right?
Right.
Yeah, and it's like, okay, so what should I do as a player to make the game fun for both myself and my opponent?
Yeah.
And think of it in reverse order. Okay, first, let me think about my opponent when I'm building my list.
Yeah.
Is this list going to make the game not fun for someone.
Right.
And I think that's why in narrative play we use power level.
Yeah.
Because you're not meant to set up your games ahead of time, build this, you're not meant to set up your list ahead of time and build these crazy lists. Like, okay, my point here is I'm going to win. Mm-hmm. No, in reality, my intent here is to tell a story.
Yeah. Yeah.
So when you do that, you're like, okay, so I'm going to bring these models in and I'm going to see who my opponent is. I'm going to see what the mission is, and we'll build an army based on that, which is hard to do with points because you're sitting there for forever putting everything together. With power level, you just kind of slap it together and just get to playing, right?
Yeah, you don't have to worry about, well, does my sergeant get melta bombs? Does he not get melta bombs? Well, that's 5 points. So, do I want this guy to have this or that? Mm-hmm. And so you end up kind of you're definitely slowing yourself down. Whereas power level, it's just like, all right, 5 points for that unit. Doesn't matter how they're kitted. 10 points for that unit.
If they're kitted with whatever's on the model.
Yeah.
Basically.
And so it does actually let you go for the quote-unquote rule of cool. Mm-hmm. I know that the way that it's now set up, that I've been modeling and painting and building my armies a little bit differently. It's like, who cares about the point value, because these guys are all going to have lightning claws, and that's rad,
Yeah, and in this way, doing it that way, you can tailor your list for your opponent, and you can tailor your list for the mission. Okay, so... And I don't mean like, oh, I'm going to tailor my list to crush my opponent. Yeah. No, you're going to tailor your list to synchronize with your opponent. You're going to, you're tailoring it so that it makes sense to fight that opponent rather than to just decimate that opponent.
Right.
And that's kind of the point of the narrative gaming.
Yeah.
If you're building a points list ahead of time without even seeing your opponent or without ever seeing the mission, you're missing the point.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying that to be elitist. I'm saying that as a fact of reality.
Yeah.
And that's the whole, I'm trying to explain the point behind the narrative gaming. And that's to tell that story. It's not to just have a game.
Yeah.
If you want to just have a game, I strongly recommend picking up the open war deck and playing games that way. I think that's what you want. Or just, put together, if you want to play competitively, then I strongly recommend looking at narrative or competitive mission packs like the Nova pack or the ITC mission pack. That's what you want.
Yeah.
This kind of thing is not meant for you if that's the kind of gaming you want. And again, I'm not saying that to be a dick. I'm saying that just that's just reality.
Plus,
and again. Go ahead.
Well, I was going to say, on the open war deck, like, I don't have one yet, but everything I've heard about it is you could actually create a pretty strong narrative just using the open war deck.
You can.
It just depends.
It's really for open play.
Yeah.
But you're right, Jason. It's a narrative that tells itself rather than you telling the narrative. So when it comes to open war, I would almost say, do the cards first.
And then build the list.
Yeah. Get an opponent, draw the cards, then build a list. Because you could conceivably have a mission that overwhelms your opponent because of the choices you made. So you're going to want to kind of reverse it and do the cards first, then build your list using power level. So I want to talk about the game master or the event organizer a little bit. Keep in mind that this person is not, so like if it's your store owner or just somebody who's done it, they're not interested in, when it comes to narrative gaming, they're not interested in figuring out who the winner is. They're not interested in figuring out, who the top dog is. That's not the point of a narrative campaign. They're interested in unfolding the story as it goes. And in this case, this goes for Games Workshop. The Games Workshop is the organizer of this specific event, but your storyteller or your game master is going to be trying to tell a story. And it's up to you to help that story unfold. You're not there to try and break their rules. You're there to try and help tell the story. So if you're looking for loopholes in the mission, then I hope you're doing so to assist the game master in making their campaign better and not to crush your opponent. That's not the point. So I think earlier on in the campaign, there was no restriction on flyers for doing the breakthrough mission or teleport. There was nothing stopping you from teleporting over with your Grey Knights and just winning the game. There was nothing stopping you from flying over and dropping your guys off and winning the game.
Yeah.
And one of the things that Games Workshop didn't do that would behoove any player, any GM, and that is, explain your intent before, in the opening salvos of the mission, text. Explain, okay, well, this is meant more for this kind of army or this kind of perspective.
Yeah.
This mission isn't meant for flyers full of guys that you can just drop off on the other side of the battlefield. And again, this all goes down to the players understanding the concept, though it's up to the GM to help explain that concept, right? Maybe you shouldn't assume that your players know your mind ahead of time, right?
Right. That would probably.
I mean, that's fair to say, right? We can't just assume our players are going to know exactly what we had in mind for a mission if we don't explain it to them.
Yeah. Well,
I guess you can kind of discern it from the narrative.
Yeah.
But again, not all players think of it from a narrative. They don't even read the narrative sometimes. They just read the rules, which I guess is another point to make. Read the narrative. The game master has put all this effort into writing the narrative. Why don't you read it? If you don't have time to read it, then you probably shouldn't be involved in the campaign. That's kind of just the reality of the situation.
Yeah, that is very true. One thing I want to say about narrative gaming and whatnot that I don't know if I've ever really talked about it. No matter what force you play, you should always look at it as an orc player. Just because you played, you have won. Doesn't matter what you've done, you won just because you played. And I think if you keep that mindset, then I think it'll make narrative play, and I think it'll make just gaming in general much, much more satisfying, more fulfilling for you and others.
Right. Yeah. Like, think about, have I contributed to making the experience better for my fellow players and for the GM? Have I, possibly even think of it from the GM's perspective, like, hey, say, hey, man, I did this thing and it was really cool. Maybe you want to write it into your story or whatever, if you feel like I'm not saying throw games, but you definitely want to work hard to, you're doing your models and you're in your own narrative a disservice by throwing a game, but, you definitely want it to be a fair fight. And, I think, if you see a problem with a mission, explaining that to your GM is a good thing, because then the GM can head it off at the pass and say, okay, hey, everybody, there's a certain, perspective you want to look at. And we did that where I'm like, okay, you guys, you may not want to just freaking teleport across the battlefield and win this mission because that's stupid. So you may want to, self-impose some restrictions when it comes to that.
Yeah.
and that all comes down to talking to the other player too.
Right.
It all comes down to like saying, hey man, I have this here. I have this army that can just teleport across the battlefield.
Yeah.
You may want to do something about that. Like, oh, well, maybe I'll take a couple squads of cultists, fill my backfield, and make it impossible for you to drop next to the board edge. And then the other player can say, oh, okay, cool. I can take my, teleporting terminators and I won't feel bad about it because you're going to have your backfield full of dudes.
Yeah.
You can kind of pre-play the game a little bit before the game. You can think about what you're taking, and then you can play the mission out. And you see this in the Games Workshop when they play these narrative missions. They are the players actually think about that. Like if you go to the Games Workshop Warhammer Live.
The Twitch channel?
On Twitch, the Twitch channel, they actually play that breakthrough mission, and they actually, you hear them actually say, well, yeah, we could just take units that fly across the battlefield and leave the battlefield, but that's not in the nature of the mission.
Right.
That's not in the narrative of the mission. And they're very cognizant of this kind of stuff. They're very cognizant of the problems that could crop up in narrative play.
Right.
But they understand that we can all be adults about it and not what do you call it? Not expose, but not take advantage of those weaknesses. And it's not, I guess it's not a weakness. It's just, you understand that there are many nuances to narrative gaming that could be exploited, and it's up to you as a player to not exploit it.
Yeah.
Okay. So, there were some fun things about the Konor campaign that the game designers took advantage of. First of all, it was those cards, those special stratagem cards that were super cool, and I think the new faction decks take advantage of this as well. They actually have stratagem cards in them.
Okay.
And that's super great because a lot of the time it's hard to remember what stratagems to use because there are so many.
Yeah.
And a lot of the time you can tailor your army to use specific stratagems.
Right.
So I loved those cards. And here's a fun note. You can go online. I did this special cool card game for work for this fun kind of getting to know you thing we did for our IT department for the rest of the state. And I came up with this game, and it required, I had to buy a giant pack of like 500 playing cards.
Okay.
But they're blank. So what I did was I printed out, all the I printed out some stickers to stick onto the playing cards, the blank playing cards, and I used those. So you can do the same thing. You can buy sticker paper.
Yeah.
And print stuff out on them, and then cut out those stickers and stick them to the blank playing cards. Or you could just take the blank playing cards and write on them.
That's cool. I didn't know you could actually buy playing cards that were blank. Okay.
Yes. There's nothing on the front or the back.
Okay.
So alternatively, you can hand out those playing cards to your players, the blank ones, and say, hey, go ahead and write the special stratagem for this week on it.
Yeah.
And they can do that. Or you can just do it ahead of time. You're not going to have 100 people. You're not going to have 100 cards. So this is something you can do. 500 playing cards, I believe, was like $20.
Yeah.
So those will last you forever. Yeah. So you can go ahead and write that week's special mission stratagem, or on those, if you have special ones for the attacker and special ones for the defender, you can go ahead and just write enough for your players.
You could also do army lists with those.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
That's
absolutely.
Yeah, there's a lot of possibilities with. I'm sorry, we've wandered off the narrative, but
no, that's fine.
Yeah, that actually has a lot of possibilities, especially if you've built certain units and you're not modifying them at all and you're running power level. You say, all right, I need 50 power level, and like, all right, here are my 10, 6, 6, 5, whatever you have to do, and you could pick that up really quick, and it could have your stats as well, so that you don't have to sit there and flip through the rule book constantly.
Now, we had a hobby hangout today with the Adeptus Terra podcast guys, and this topic came up, and someone was saying, "Whoa, well, said exactly what you said. You could put your units on those."
Yeah.
Or he was saying he's actually a listener of our show. He was actually saying, "Oh well, I hope they come out with cards for units."
Yeah.
Well, yeah, that would be amazing. I don't know if they'll do that, but you can do your own using these cards. And like I said, you can print them out on the sticker paper, stick them to these cards, and then slot them into plastic card holders like they have for Magic the Gathering cards. But it's legit. You could just slot them in there. You could have your entire codex could be in a binder, and you could just unsleeve, and you could make a list by sleeving your cards into the plastic card holders, and that's your list.
That's interesting. I like that idea. This could be very interesting. Yeah.
It could be super fun, right? Yeah. And you could be like, well, what happens if you have like 4 units? Maybe just have 4 of those printed out.
Yeah.
And slide those into your plastic card holders, and there it is.
Okay, yeah.
And then the other cool thing is it's plastic, right?
Right.
So you take a dry erase marker and go times 5 guys, or put a star next to the upgrade that you did.
Yeah.
So you'd be like, all right, plasma gun, melt-a-gun, and then just do times 2 next to plasma gun or whatever. Lots of possibilities there, right?
Easy. Yeah, and if you're running very specific lists that you always kind of keep around, like I've developed my Raven Guard list. I've been modifying it more into where I have a foot Raven Guard list, and then I have a jetpack Raven Guard list. So, yeah, there's all sorts of fun stuff that can be done there. Yeah.
So another thing that was awesome from the Konor campaign was the reports that they were doing. The narrative reports. And you can do the same thing. Now, the campaign I ran, we had a website for it. And you can use a blog. Google has a blog system with Blogger. You can go on Blogger, sign up for a free blog, and you go ahead and use that. Anybody can use it. It's not hard to set up.
Yeah.
Though you can also do a Facebook group or something like that. Our group has a lot of people who don't use Facebook, so that's why I don't use that.
Yeah.
But we have our Discord group. You could set up a channel specifically for the campaign and put your narrative battle reports through there. In any case, I strongly recommend following Games Workshop's lead and doing a narrative report on the aftermath of that week's mission. I think that's if you're not willing to put forth that much effort, maybe the narrative campaign is you want people to be engaged, and if you don't have time for that, I would just skip the narrative campaign thing. Because you're going to want to put at least put that much effort into it. Okay. So I guess the next thing to talk about is the missions. What did you think was cool about the Konor missions, Jason? What tickled your fancy on those?
Well, you know me, I like destruction, a lot of it, and the one where the ground was being destroyed as they were running away, just kind of that one spoke to me, and that's kind of disturbing now that I think about that. The other one that really spoke to me was one with the objectives that you had to destroy, which we're getting back to the destroying things. What have we learned about Jason? Well, we've learned something interesting about his psyche.
Well, I think you make a good point here, and that's and one of the missions I thought was very interesting was the objective destruction one, and it was important that the designer explained that it was the most models within 3 inches of the objective destroyed it. It wasn't the unit that was holding the objective. Very important distinction. And you need to think about who's playing in your campaign, what armies are in your campaign when coming up with the special rules for it. Again, at that point, only one army had objectives secured. Yeah. And it would have extremely swayed things if it was the unit holding the objective. Yeah. But it wasn't. Yeah. They specifically said models holding it. And I think, to the point of anyone who's saying, match play is more balanced, you can build balance into your missions. You don't have to throw balance out the window when it comes to narrative gaming. You can build the balance in yourself. But, you still need that social contract. You still need that thinking about your opponent, thinking about your GM. At the same time, it's up to the GM to try and make the missions as fun and balanced as possible. And when I say balanced, I mean from a long game perspective. Yeah. So explain yourself, explain your missions, explain why you're doing things. And I think you'll find your players are a lot more accepting if you explain yourself. I think if GW had explained the missions a little bit better, they would have had a better reception from some players. And when I say explain the missions, I don't mean saying like explaining the rules better. I mean explaining the intent better. Yeah. Actually come out and say, hey, this is going to be a little better for Chaos this week. Yeah. That's just the reality. And that's fine. You can say, hey, guess what? You're on the back foot this week. Do what you can to dig yourself out of it. Score as many points as possible in this week. And that's another thing. Do you think it would be better if maybe even if Chaos is winning, or say one side is winning more, right, to allow the other side to kind of carry on what victory points they had gotten in the next week? So, how to explain this?
I think I know what you're saying.
Even though you're saying, okay, you're going to be on the back foot, you're probably going to lose these missions this week. Yeah. Maybe some kind of Pyrrhic victory to go along with it. Like, oh, but I scored, Slay the Warlord. Yeah. Or something, having a way to snatch victory from the jaws of defeat in some ways might be good.
There are ways you could actually build this into your campaigns, into your scenarios, by having what are they called, asymmetric victory conditions.
Yeah, there's that. That's great.
Where you could create it to where you have both major and minor victory conditions, and you could actually have it to where everyone wins, which is kind of odd. But if it goes through and if not everyone has the exact same goals, then you could go through and create those sorts of conditions. Yeah, if Chaos wins this major victory condition, all this stuff is a problem, but the Imperium or the opponent, if they win this other condition, if they manage to pull that off, then it's a minor victory, or maybe it's a major victory also, just because they've been able to do one thing that needed to be done. Like, for instance, we had getting off the planet, getting to the spaceport. It could have been, not only does the attacker have to get off the board, but so does the defender. You're fighting a retreat, essentially, a shooting retreat. Yeah. So, yeah, you can get off the board, but you have to go through and, keep the other side from getting off also.
Right. So like I'm picking up what you're putting down. So I'm thinking of that last mission and where the chaos player could summon.
Yeah.
What if it didn't cost command points to summon? What if you got a victory point every time you summoned a unit of Nurgle demons?
Okay.
And Chaos wins if they score 12 victory points that way. Or whatever. Let's leave victory points out of it. Victory points are a way of measuring success in a symmetrical environment.
Yeah.
In an asymmetrical environment, you don't have to really worry about victory points. You can say, okay, if you summon 12 Nurgle units, you win the game.
Yeah.
Imperium player, if you get 50% or more of your units off the battlefield, you win the game.
Right.
Both players have the capacity to win the game.
Right.
And that's what you're getting at, right? Like,
yeah.
Like, I mean, you could still lose.
Yeah.
But
they could both lose. It could be a game
you could
where
both lose too. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. You can both win and you can both lose, or one or each of you can win or lose. And that's a really good point, Jason.
Yeah.
And I think that's a good way to go if you are dealing with a sophisticated group of narrative gamers.
Yeah.
I don't blame GW for not setting up the missions that way.
No, because that could get real complex
for the global campaign. Yeah. A lot of this was for people who I think were new to narrative gaming.
Yeah.
And when it comes to those things, a lot of this stuff was familiar.
Yeah.
You had a very familiar, victory points. You had your stratagems and everything. I think this was setting people up for more narrative gaming in the future. And I'm looking forward to kind of narrative campaign books and stuff going forward. Now, another thing I want to say is explaining the battlefield. Remember that mission where they were saying, use a very, very light terrain for this battlefield?
Yeah, vaguely. Yeah.
Yeah. So, one of the things that they do in the book, in the narrative games in the book, they explain a great deal about, what kinds of armies you want to bring.
Yeah. So
especially the middle tier missions for the 3-game narratives that they have set up in there. So it says, a lot of times it says, oh, this mission is really meant for lots of elite forces on foot.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's the rescue mission and the sabotage mission.
Yeah.
The attacker is really meant to be this elite force of troops going in and blowing up the center objective or whatever. And it's not meant for, bikes or giant tanks rolling in. It's not a full scale assault.
Right.
And they explain that. They never did that in the Konor campaign. They try to do it for example, mission 5, like we said, you couldn't score with the flyers.
Right.
You couldn't move off the battlefield with the flyers and score that way, which it's elegant to do that.
Mm-hmm.
But, sometimes it pays to be blunt, I think, and just explain, listen, don't bring flyers. Don't be an bring a bunch of flyers and win the game. Instead, just say it. Don't try, I guess, okay, write it into the rules if you think of it, or if you think of an easy way to write it into the rules, but I don't think it pays to jump through hoops.
Yeah.
And make it hard to explain the victory conditions. If you just explain ahead of time, hey, please don't bring your armored battle group to a rescue mission.
Well, could you just go through and limit it with keywords?
You could.
Yeah.
You could limit it with keywords, and like I said, but at the same time, what if someone says, oh, but maybe I want to bring my, maybe I'm an Eldar player and I want to bring this black wave serpent I have painted up. It's all in stealth colors or whatever.
Okay.
Well,
I can see. You could restrict.
I can see where you're coming from. Yeah, you can restrict rules.
Yeah.
I would say go ahead and restrict rules, but keep an open mind when it comes to the way people are telling their narrative.
Yeah.
Like for example, if you were playing an Astra Militarum player and he's like, or she, they're like, I have this black Valkyrie that I have for stealth missions.
Yeah.
Right? Like, okay, yeah, do it. But don't like spam Valkyries just to auto win the rescue mission.
Right. Well, actually what you could do in that case is say, how about this? Once, like if there's an objective, once that objective is secured, and I'm using the word secured, like once someone's within that objective, then you can bring that flyer on immediately. That is like, you don't even have to count points for it, or maybe you do, I don't care. But that could be something that comes in. And at that point in the game, maybe it's held in reserves until that happens. You can give it a discount, I guess, since it won't show up or not even counted at all. So it does show up, but it just shows up then to be the Deus and Machina. It's like, here we go. Because I have the same idea that I've been wanting to do with what's the Death Watch flyer? I just picked one up recently, but I don't know how I would fit it into certain games. But maybe I use it only to bring people in and then take them off, and I just have it there as, hey, look, I have a pretty flyer.
Right. Yeah. And again, I think a lot of this is, I'm sure GW has similar conversations about their mission design.
Yeah.
For narrative missions. And again, this whole conversation explains why it's so hard to come up with these rules.
Yeah.
And why Games Workshop in the past has relied so much on players just having that conversation ahead of time.
Yeah.
And, I know one of our buddies was saying, well, why do the narrative rules feel less narrative than the matched play rules? Because you can get around the narratives of a lot of these missions by playing like, or I guess just playing with all the rules. Well, it's, that's kind of the social contract is what keeps it from being a total crap show. And it's up to you as the player to make narrative gaming fun. And so when the GM says, hey, this mission totally falls apart if you play it this way, just having that caveat at the start of the mission is a good idea.
Yeah, that is a good idea.
That's all I'm saying. So another thing is, balance your stratagems with the mission, I think. I think the stratagems are a great tool for narrative gaming, but keep them balanced for that mission. I would hesitate negating a lot of your cool rules with the stratagems, which could be a knee-jerk reaction as to, okay, so I got all these special rules in this mission, so I need to make stratagems to let players kind of either overcome some of these special rules or exploit some of these special rules. That if you're overloading your stratagems to overcome rules, then maybe your special rules are a little too strong.
Yeah.
So again, I'm thinking of that last mission where GW put in some stratagems to overcome some of the rules they had for the terrain. Maybe that's a sign that those rules for the terrain are a little too strong to begin with.
Yeah, I don't know. I've never played those rules or with that terrain. I've seen pictures of it. I know people own it, but I don't own it.
Well, I'm just saying this as a warning to GMs out there. Like if you're overloading those stratagems to help players against those special rules, double back and look at those special rules and think to yourself, okay, have I overdone it here? Maybe orbital bombardment on a 4-up is a bad idea. Maybe that was a bad call on my part. So really, you want to make your missions as clear and as fun as possible. go ahead and get crazy with them. Just try to make sure that they balance each other out. So maybe you do want the Orbital Bombardments to be on a 4-up.
Yeah.
Throwing mortal wounds out like a madman. But maybe you want to go ahead and balance that by adding the what was it? What's that rule called again? The reinforcements.
Oh, okay, yeah.
The ongoing reserves rules.
Yeah.
Maybe you want to bring on more models because you're going to be wiping out lots of models as well.
Or maybe the bombardment doesn't start until turn 4.
Later.
Yeah.
Yeah. Or until someone has secured an objective of some kind.
Well,
like, oh, this is the big red button objective. I'm going to press the big red freaking button, and we're going to start bringing in some death.
Well, on our Discord channel, we were talking about, our buddy Phil was talking about having 2 Horde armies that just fight it out to the very end. But he would want it to be where everyone dies, where there's no one left. For those of you who don't know, Phil would be the perfect commissar. But we won't go there. And I had suggested, well, on turn 4, why don't you just start with orbital bombardments? Each unit gets hit. Each unit gets hit with 1, and everyone takes an armor save. And that's all units across the table. Which I realize with Horde armies would start cutting those units down to nothing pretty quick, especially one who's running T-shirt saves, but. He did ask for something bloody, and I said, hey, what about this? So.
That's awesome. So for your campaign, for the Konor campaign, they did this weekly focus thing that focused on a specific unit. I mean, I think that was a in-store thing. That was very much I think that was a economic decision as much as anything else. But at the same time, maybe you do want to do some kind of interesting unit focus, like, oh, I want to do an old Spearhead style game where it's just a tank war. I mean, there's nothing wrong with that.
Yeah.
Again, just communicating that kind of thing to your players ahead of time is definitely important. That way they can get their models painted up or whatever. Special rules for rewarding painting and stuff.
Yeah.
It really depends on what kind of group you're running. If it is a game store, why not? Because, you might want to support the store. And our store was very generous with their prize support for Konor. Flipside is a great place to play, and they were really, really supportive of the campaign and the people who ran in it, and we really appreciated that. So support your FLGS. If you're running your campaign in your store, do what you can to support that store, and if that means giving extra points for running models bought at the store, do that. Maybe just do a $5 entry fee and do door prizes at the end.
Yeah.
I mean, it's that simple. A $5 entry fee or a £3 entry fee is not a big deal for most people. And it gives people an investment in the store and in the venue. If you're doing it in your game room or in your garage, maybe still ask for a $5 entry fee and say, hey, I'm putting all of this towards terrain for the campaign or a special thing for the campaign. You might find that your players are receptive to it. What else? I don't know. What did you have any other thoughts as far as, the missions or anything like that? With the campaigns?
One thing I've enjoyed in other games that I've played that ended up with a narrative focus. I mean, they weren't always specifically part of campaigns, but they could easily be implemented. There was one time that our friend Malahat Mike and I were playing a game. He'd come into town to play, and I basically had an Imperial Knight, and it was running down his librarian. It was in Terminator armor. And I was trying to think, how can I make this more amusing? Because by this time, I think we were supposed to be at a tournament, but he and I basically said, nah, we're good, and started goofing off, which was, more my style anyway. And we asked you to help us with a rule, to create a narrative rule. In this case, would be this Imperial Knight is going to run down this librarian and kidnap him for the Blood Ravens. And that was actually a lot of fun. That was not a narrative. We weren't planning on a narrative game, but it was something fun that happened, and we could easily build a campaign off of just that goofy little idea. You can create entire books off of one throwaway line in another novel. And in this case, just by, hey, let's see if I can, liberate this guy for the Blood Ravens, we could easily create a campaign where Mike tries to get the librarian back. So that's just, don't be afraid. Don't think I don't have ideas. All you have to do is all you need is a small kernel, just some little idea. And it's amazing how just that one idea can grow and expand into something much larger than you would have initially thought.
Yeah, and I think I want to reiterate something we said earlier. And that's not everybody wants to do narrative gaming.
Right.
Not everybody has the right mindset for narrative gaming, and that's fine. Don't force people to do something they don't want to do. I mean, most people won't accept it anyways. Yeah. So you can't force people to do something they don't want to do. And I wouldn't create bad feelings in your group by doing that. Not everybody has to participate. One thing that I said right off the bat was, listen, you can participate in the campaign. You don't have to run the narrative missions if you don't want to. You don't have to do any of that if you don't want to. But if you want to contribute to the store and put your $5 in and just play a random game and have a chance at the prizes at the end, go ahead.
Yeah. Yeah. And depending on the type of campaign that you're running, you can probably create slots for people who don't want to do the narrative. It goes through and kind of creates other victory conditions that aren't so cut and dried. They're still there to help with the weight of numbers, but they're not driving the general storyline, maybe.
Right, and that's really only when it comes to club hammer gaming. Gaming at your club. If you're doing Garage Hammer or just playing in a focused group of friends, then that point is moot. You would just handpick your opponents anyways.
Yeah.
You would handpick your players anyways at that point. Which, we've done both types of campaigns at the store. We've had map campaigns where I set up this elaborate, map where, and set up resources, and players played against each other for resources, and it was this whole thing, and it was all very complicated. This was a long time ago, before I had so many responsibilities and stuff. And that worked out fine.
I think I played in the last couple of weeks of that one. That's when I first showed up in Albany. I think. And
that was fun. Yeah. It can be fun, but again, one of the things that you have a problem with is trying to get all these disparate armies to work in the same narrative. And that can be fun, but I don't want to do that every time.
Yeah.
And that's what Konor was. Konor was another one like that, where they said, "Oh, just play whatever."
Yeah.
And that's okay. And that can be fun, and it's a loose narrative, right? You're very much kind of turning a blind eye to reality a little bit. I use the word reality very loosely here, but you have all these factions show up, and you just kind of roll with it,
right? Well, everything was marked attacker defender, so they could easily, ignore other stuff. It's like, okay, fine, you have 2 orc players. One's the attacker, one's the defender, or you have 2 Eldar players.
Right.
And They could still count things.
And you can fudge it,
yeah.
And just put things towards one side or the other. And you can come up with, as a player, you can be like, well, the reason my orc army is working for the defender is because of this reason or that reason. And, you're not directly helping them, but your actions for some reason are helping them. Just by the reality of maybe your position or your location or whatever. But it's, for me, I prefer to do the whole, I'm curating this narrative for my army, and I am inviting other players into it to help me tell this narrative. And that's kind of what I did with you and John with the narrative where my orcs were assaulting this forge world a while back, and we did that for the Altar of War podcast, and that I find that a little bit more fun because you have a specific narrative with specific armies being used, and it's a more cohesive narrative in my opinion. The only thing is you have to trust the GM of that army to come up with fair missions and fun missions. And I think that's a little more fun, saying you can do it with a larger group of people too. You can say, okay, so this is who has what armies. So instead of being selfish and only thinking of your army, you think, okay, or only thinking of your narrative and saying, okay, I need somebody who's got an Ultramarines army. Who's got an Ultramarines army?
Yeah.
Instead of doing that, look at your friends and say, who do I want to play with?
Yeah.
Okay, I want to play with this person and that person. So, okay, I'm going to write a narrative that involves their armies.
Right.
So look at it from that perspective. Put the player first. Then the narrative will naturally follow.
That sounds like a good idea. Yeah, and that's the best way to work, I think.
Yeah, I think so too. So if you have a friend in particular who you want to do a narrative with, go to them and say, hey, would you like to do a narrative campaign with me?
Yeah.
And if they say yes, then say, okay, I'm gonna start writing this narrative that's going to involve your army and my army, and maybe someone else's army to go along with it.
Right.
Is that cool? And then you start writing it, and then you put it together, and it's a collaborative process. In that way, and I think that works really, really well. And I think you get way more cohesive narratives out of that method.
Yeah, that sounds...
Especially because you're involving them in the process.
Yeah, and it could be that, you're talking to someone and one of the narratives they have around their army you could easily work with. Like you had Tuska, and that was, what you went with. My narrative seems to be, do you have any relics? Any cool objective markers? And Blood Ravens, sorry. And that's a great way to, put me into a narrative very quickly. And considering how objective based most games, most campaigns are, I can be written into campaigns pretty easily. Which means I guess I'm easy. Not much of a shock there. Whatever.
Right. Yeah, so I mean, I think that we've narrowed it down really to two very specific. Okay, well, specifically vague. Groupings of narrative. One is the large group campaign that involves as many people as possible, and it has a vague narrative that is supported by the players.
Yeah.
Another is a very focused, very intentional narrative based on the players specifically that are involved in it.
Yeah.
And just keep that in mind. But I think a lot of our advice holds true for both types of narratives. And that is keep your missions very descriptive of the narrative that you want to tell. Inform your players of your intent of these missions ahead of time, and make sure everything is explained in a way that I guess, kind of guides the player to actually reading it instead of just skimming over.
Yeah.
If you're just going to skim over the rules, then, it's probably not the kind of gaming for you. Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. Well, I think that was a nice conversation.
Yeah.
I think that was really good. I hope that folks have a better understanding of narrative gaming and campaign gaming after listening to that. I really think that GW did a great job of introducing people to narrative gaming with the Konor campaign, but I really am looking forward to seeing what they come up with when it comes to campaign books.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to that too. The end of 7th edition had so many really nice campaign books. Although that third Primarch book, the fluff we're not going there. But the campaign systems themselves were really good. One of my favorite systems was it the Kion book, which was the Tau versus Raven Guard / White Scars. And there are some scenarios in there that were incredible. Like, I had no interest really in building flyers just because of having to move them around, but I read one of the missions for that and thought, no, I'm good. I'll go ahead and build some.
Yeah. And that's, I'm very heartened by the Konor campaign in that I was just a little worried going from 7th to 8th because 7th edition was very much meant for the narrative gamer.
Yeah.
A lot of the complaints about 7th edition stemmed from people playing it competitively and squeezing as much power out of a narrative rule set as they possibly could.
Yeah.
And that was the disconnect.
Yeah.
I think there was a very strong disconnect between what the intent of the rules were and what the actions of the players were.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying hate the player, hate the game, or don't hate the player. Yes, hate both. No, I'm not saying don't hate the player, hate the game, or I'm not saying don't hate the game, hate the player. It's just, that's just the reality of the situation. Yeah. The rules did not support the way that people played the game. And I know I'm not saying GW it was at fault, because they definitely should have listened to those players and fixed things for them. And they did. That's what 8th edition did. You have the different styles of play. And if you have a mindset where you're saying, well, this narrative mission is broken because you can break it, and I guess you'll just have to break it, and then you probably want to play matched play rules.
Yeah.
If you look at matched play rules and say, well, I can't do half of the stuff my army is awesome at because I can't, how am I supposed to summon my Nurglings if I have to, how can I summon 100 Nurglings if I have to pay points for them?
Right.
Maybe matched play is not for you.
Yeah.
That's all I'm saying. I think, divining intent is the most important thing, and having that conversation ahead of time. And sometimes that conversation is, let's play matched play.
Yeah.
Other times it's a lot more nuanced, and it's like, okay, for this narrative, what kinds of things do you want to see?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I think that was a good conversation. I think we're good. Jason, is there anything you wanted to add?
No, I think we really went over this quite well. I think we could probably in the future talk more about narrative gaming and maybe mission design.
Oh, obviously.
We could do some.
Yeah, I personally see a whole conversation about designing stratagems.
Yeah, and that could be something that comes up soon. So.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Absolutely. All right, cool. Well, let's take a break, come back, and close out the show.
Hey, mofos. Are you looking for more Warhammer 40k video content? Well, the Scarred Cast posts regular battle reports as well as tactics and strategy videos. Be sure to check out all the cool hobby content for the avid tabletop wargamer. That's Scarred Cast, Skared, on YouTube. I just want to invite you to Frayed Paintbrush Hobby Progress Facebook group. It is a positive group set up to motivate us to hobby and then share it with all the other members. At the beginning of the month, post up your monthly challenge on the page, and then at the end of the month, you post the completed work for all to see. No pressure, just fun among friends. Once again, that's Frayed, Frayed Paintbrush. Hope to see you there.
All right, welcome back. So we have an interview today with Zachary from the London 40k GT. Hi, Zach.
Hey guys, how are you?
Great, and what's great is that it's not really just the 40k GT anymore. You have greatly expanded the breadth of games available at your event in the past couple of years, haven't you?
Yeah, exactly. We've actually had to go through a bit of a rebranding process. So our web address and all that sort of marketing collateral had to be redone. We're no longer the London 40k GT. We're now just the London Grand Tournament. Still the LGT for short. But yeah, you're right. We've added a bunch of new events. So I think it's good news. A bit of extra work on my side of things, but yeah, very excited to sort of go from being a 40k tournament to very much being a War Games convention now.
That's fantastic. That's great news and just horrible news. Congratulations / my condolences. Yeah, I know what that's like. So, well, that's great. Like last year, you had Games Workshop show up at your event, and I know that with that comes a lot of stuff like that you're gonna get people who are gonna want to do Age of Sigmar and all that. And I know that Greg Dan is gonna be is he heading up the Heresy stuff again?
Yeah, we've got Greg coming back for a second year to do his brand of 30k event, which was hugely popular last year. You're right, we've obviously added Age of Sigmar as well. We've got a sort of full-scale grand tournament for the Age of Sigmar guys. But we've also added a narrative 40k event. We've sort of found that the 40k GT, which is very much sort of the signature event that started it all, was sent out really quickly, but there was still a large sort of population of people that didn't want to come to a grand tournament, no matter how much I tried to reinforce the message that it's great fun, regardless of whether you win or not. So we've put a narrative event on, hopefully to help cater to those people that wanted to do a bit of narrative gaming but didn't play 30k. But the event I'm sort of really sort of passionate about helping the lead grow is we're going to do a Necromunda sort of campaign weekend. Hopefully the new game will sort of have been launched by then and will be popular, but there's a real in the UK, I'm sure there probably is in America as well, but sort of still a cult following for Necromunda. It's a hugely sort of seminal game, and I'm pleased to be able to help bring that back to sort of mainstream wargaming. So yeah, we've got that on, as well as a big Blood Bowl Cup as well. So yeah, very much sort of still Games Workshop games, but I think we've got 6 or 7 different events this year.
Oh wow, that is fantastic. That's really good news. A lot of people love those specialist games, and they still want to play them. And Games Workshop has done a great job of facilitating that and bringing things back. And people, I think that they're really just trying to make as many people happy as possible at once, which is a daunting task, and it's a daunting task for anyone running an event as well. But I guess what's left to do but to try it, right? So good on you for that.
Yeah. Oh, thanks very much. I think it's interesting when you try to grow an event by adding more and more sort of side events or whatever. Because while a lot of people played Necromunda, they probably played 40k or another Games Workshop game at the same time. What I find really interesting about Blood Bowl in particular is there's plenty of people play Blood Bowl but don't play any other Games Workshop games. So I think that's it's definitely going to be a challenge to make that successful, because I think that the NAF have done a really good job of keeping it going without the Games Workshop support being there, and we're really keen to get involved sort of with them to make the London Blood Bowl GT successful as possible. So yeah, I think it's exciting times to be a Games Workshop enthusiast, regardless of the game you play.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. And, I guess, we can't get too angry with Games Workshop for bringing stuff back and trying very hard to put their own stamp back on things. I mean, you gotta give it to people for holding the torch. I know that there's a bunch of people out there still holding the torch for, Battlefleet Gothic. And I am deeply respectful of the work they've put into it, but yeah, it's time to hand things over and at the very least switch that energy from curating rules to curating the community, which is really all it was about anyways, right?
Yeah, I think that's a really good point, that the people that have spent large amounts of their time and money on helping to build a community in Games Workshop's absence shouldn't take their initiative to get back involved with these games as a criticism, or that they're now superfluous. They're still community leaders, and there's still plenty of things they can be doing. It's ultimately Games Workshop's wanted to get back involved in all these games. It's probably a testament to the great achievements these people have accomplished over the last few years, rather than a criticism of it. So, absolutely. Yeah, I think it's exciting times, and I think anyone that's been running independent tournaments or cups or whatever should take this as a big pat on the back and a challenge to up their game and try and do bigger and greater things.
Yeah, they should be proud of the holding the torch for so long, and this almost feels like an absolution for the effort that they've put in. So congratulations to them. So we've got 40K GT, the 40K GT. I know that you've had your own kind of brand in the past, and I guess maybe with a strong leaning towards ETC style missions and whatnot. Is that going to continue in 2017? Right? Is that what the year we're in right now? 2018.
2018. Yeah. So,
I'm 1 year shy of 40, Zachary. It's starting to just not matter to me anymore.
Yeah, it's all right. Well, there's no time travel involved in our missions, fortunately, but they have been tricky to sort of sort out, because there's a couple of things into play. One is obviously Games Workshop are releasing a large amount of content over the next 12 months. Since game launch, there's been lots of things coming out. So balancing that with the fact that the ETC missions are very unsettled at the moment. This year's ETC was very much rushed through as 8th edition. People only had, I think, a couple of weeks to vote on the mission pack after 8th edition came out before the cutoff date. So it wouldn't be fair or actually, a good level of competitive balance to use the ETC's missions that have just been used.
Well, I'm sure they would agree with you, right, Zachary? They would
exactly.
probably totally agree with you.
Yeah, and fortunately, I know a large number of the captains and Tom Adriani as well. So, I don't think they're under any illusion that they've had the best pack in the world and everyone should use it. What we've got to try to do, and the LGT is the same thing we always try to do, which is make it relevant to the ETC players, but still very much an enjoyable mission pack for the sort of the gamers that may only play one tournament a year, which would be mine. So it's definitely finding that balance between hardcore competitive, really balanced play, and a format that allows people to bring armies that they like playing with. Now, what we've done in the past was tweak missions slightly to to favour army compositions that were more fun. In 8th edition, I don't think that's necessarily something that needs to be done. I think at the moment we're probably in the best phase in sort of 40k history, where you can bring a lot of different stuff. Like the armies winning tournaments are hugely diverse, faction-wise as well as build-wise, and there doesn't really need to be a massive amount of intervention in order to create pleasant armies. In my opinion, and I've played a lot over the last 6 months or so since the edition was launched around the world, different types of players. So I've got quite a good understanding of what people as consumers like in terms of the tournaments they attend. Now, there's obviously a lot of chatter on the internet at the moment about certain builds that are less enjoyable, and I think they are doing relatively well. We're seeing smite spam and character spam lists top 10 quite frequently, but it doesn't mean they're winning every event. And actually, if you look at the GTs they're winning, I mean, the major events, they're not winning any of them. So I kind of feel like at the moment missions can be really well designed for pure balance in terms of the game, as opposed to needing to try to create some sort of intervention. So our pack comes out on the 1st of November.
Mm-hmm.
Unlike previous years, it won't be 100% set in stone from day one, which is what we normally try to do. We'll have in there basically the outline of what the tournament's going to be and what the missions are going to be like, on the caveat that should a material change drop in the sort of intervening 5 months between the pack coming out and the event, there may be a process of reevaluating those missions, sort of to modernize them with any releases that come out.
Well, that sounds great. Now, especially in a volatile environment with so many releases coming out so quickly, and I don't mean volatile negatively. I just mean from a fact of reality. So it makes sense for things to kind of be in flux. Now, I'm really excited about the concept of a narrative portion. I know that every game can be narrative driven, even at a tournament, but it is nice to have a narrative focus. Now, that's kind of what Greg does with his 30K stuff, I think, right? So this is this is something that's who's doing the narrative? Is it you, or did someone step up?
No, I've been looking for somebody to sort of lead on that for quite some time now, because a narrative event is no less organized or no less structured than a competitive event. It's just got a different focus.
Well, I'll tell you what, Zachary, $998 USD buys a plane ticket from New York City to London. So I'm sure you've got that in your budget.
Yeah, but it also buys you one back as well, so you don't want to end up being stranded there.
Oh no, that's round trip. That's round trip. So it's a steal.
I think it's less than that, actually, though. I think because we can fly return to New York for £400, so it's about. Yeah.
Well, okay. Well, here's the thing, Zachary. I expect top treatment. So,
top treatment.
Yeah, British Airways only, direct flight. I don't want to be stopping off in freaking Belgrade or Belfast or whatever random countries my president is making up these days. All right, because that's dangerous for people like me. I'm just putting.
Yeah, National Nova this year stopped off in Reykjavik and ended up spending about £30 just on sandwiches. So my cheap flight got really expensive really quickly. But yeah, don't go to Iceland; it's really expensive. Albeit it's a beautiful place. But anyway, not much 40k there, unfortunately.
Oh.
No, but yeah, we've got this narrative event going on. I've got the guys from Greetings from the Warp running it, which are I think they started out primarily as a gaming club, but because their club had such a strong emphasis on painting and the hobby side of the game, and just having a really good, well-rounded bunch of people that cared about their models, they got a bit of their gaming group Facebook page ended up becoming a bit of a sort of painting Facebook page.
Mm-hmm.
And they started running events that were geared towards the type of events that their club members and other sort of hobbyists with a similar orientation would enjoy. And I went to a bunch just because they're nearby and need to get some practice in. And the guys are great. They do an amazing job at their events. And I was talking to them about running a narrative event at the LGT, and they were up for it. So they're going to head things up. Conversation's still in early stages, so we don't have a pack fully sort of drafted yet. But 1st of November, that will be released along with ticket sales and all the other packs that are going up at the same time.
If those negotiations break down, just let me know.
Yeah. I'll send you a plane ticket and a sandwich.
Oh, very nice. All right, well, that's fantastic. That's good to hear. I'm really glad that you're diversifying, and even though the event was a great premiere event to begin with, it's only going to get better with additional gaming diversity. Is it in the same location? Are you still going to be able to fit everybody in there?
Well, yeah. Actually, we've managed to secure some more space in the same venue as last year. So we've got space for up to 800 people now. That's over double the size we were last year, and I think it's going to be a challenge to get 800, seeing as we're still only in year 3. But the 40k event sold out in 11 days last year. We sold 207 tickets in less than 2 weeks. So with more space, there'll definitely be a large 40k event. The GT, I think, will probably be the second largest 40k GT in the world that year after the LVO. We expect to do over 250, which will mean it will be massive. But then, with all the side events, if they can all sell to their targets, which vary from sort of 50 to 100, depending on the game system, then we should get around 500, 550, which will be double the size of last year.
Wow, that's amazing. Well, that's great to hear. So are you in need of anybody to volunteer to help with terrain or volunteer to bring terrain or anything like that? Do you need any volunteers for to judging or anything like that?
Well, we can certainly always do with more volunteers. We try to match people up with things that they're passionate about, as well as things that they've got skills for. So I'm not one that likes to force boring tasks on people. That's my job as a TO. That's why what comes part and parcel with running the event. But if anyone listens to the show and wants to get involved in whatever capacity, the best thing to do is email me, because then we can try to pair them with something that we need, but also that they genuinely care about. Not everyone likes building terrain, but some people do. So if you're that person, great. If you're not that person, then we'll find something else fun. So yeah, if anyone wants to get in touch, my email address that people can get me on is info@london40kgrandtournament.co.uk. Or if you ping me a Facebook post, then I'll get that too.
That's awesome. All right. So Jason, you know what needs to happen? We need the school to send you to London on some sort of business trip, and you're going to have to take your assistant, right?
Uh-huh.
You're going to work on that?
Now keep talking. I'll see what I can do. It's going to be an interesting justification I have to write for that one.
There's lots of museums and things for the kids to see.
It's true. It's true. Yeah, I'm sure there's plenty of musical college. Isn't Vassar in England somewhere?
No.
We've got RADA, which is the famous one in London.
Yeah.
Yeah, London's got some stuff. I've done research at the British Library, the London Library. A couple of years ago, so I could always use that as an excuse.
So, Zachary, is there anything else you wanted to bring up before we rattle off the rest of the contact information?
Yes. So, in terms of the 40k GT, I'll just sort of reinforce what I said. A bunch of dice, drinking a bunch of beer with your buddies is always a good laugh, and that's what we're all about at the LGT. It's just now we can do it across Sigmar and all the other game systems as well. So yeah, I mean, if anyone likes what they hear and wants to come along to basically have a big party, then tickets go on sale on the 1st of November from our website, which is lgtpresents.co.uk.
Awesome. That is fantastic. And be sure to get in there and get your tickets, especially if you want to do the GT, because that is going to sell. Get in there, get your tickets, and have a great time. Hopefully one day I can make it. Won't be this year, but definitely something that is on my bucket list. All right, Zachary. Well,
yeah, we'd love to have you.
Thanks so much for joining us. I'm glad we could help promote this wonderful event, and I wish you all the best of luck.
No worries. Thanks very much, guys.
Peace.
Blood Ravens Chapter is a Facebook group set up and run by passionate fans of the mysterious Space Marine chapter. They have weekly features, regular competitions, and an encouraging community ethos designed to let people get the most from their hobby. Search for Blood Ravens Chapter Plus on Facebook using the plus symbol if you're a fan or collector of these heroes of the Imperium. Knowledge is power. Guard it well.
Welcome back. Outro time. Thank you so much for joining us for that nice conversation, everyone. I hope that people didn't tune out like halfway through the mission description of the Konor campaign because that was a really fun conversation we had for the second half. Yeah. I guess, folks, play your narrative games and let us know. Let us know if you had any ideas for narrative campaigns that we didn't think of. Anyways, please check us out on iTunes. Give us the 5-star review and the wonderful description of how much you love us and love our podcast. Check out Facebook.
Yep. Instagram.
Masters of the Forge on Facebook. Instagram.
Look for hashtag Masters of the Forge.
Hashtag LOL. I don't know. Hashtag.
Sure. And then our webpage, mastersoftheforge.com. Yeah.
Twitter, Masters of Forge on Twitter.
And
I'm so tired. I'm exhausted. I have chicken wings awaiting. And I really am looking forward to that.
Well, in that case,
next week, I don't know what next week's topic is. I think what's going to happen is I am going to go into our list of topic ideas that the listeners have given us, and I'm just going to randomly pick one.
Cool.
Because I think we deserve that kind of episode.
Well, that and also we've been covering every codex release on the planet. I mean, we're recording now right the same day that we released, so we have 2 weeks. We could have a new codex sitting on our doorstep, Wednesday? Thursday?
Yeah, exactly. But I think, one of our old, standbys was to pick a random obscure topic and talk about it for 2 hours.
We can do that.
We really haven't done that.
Not in a while.
In a long time, because it's all been all these grandiose big topics that are usually, the bread and butter of other podcasts. So I'm going to look in our list of crazy topics, find something that you probably shouldn't be able to talk about for 2 hours, and we're going to talk about it for 2 hours.
Because that's the way we do things.
All right, great. So until then,
play the game the way you want to.
This podcast is protected by the Creative Commons Attribution, No Derivatives, Non-Commercial, International License. More information about this license and contact information if you have any requests can be found at our blog, mastersoftheforge.com. The The music used in this podcast was made by Parad of the duo Sublevel 3. The track is used with his permission.
It's such a good feeling to play games your way. It's such a happy feeling 40K'ing away. And when you throw dice with story in mind, it's such a wonderful way to unwind. It's a good feeling, a very good feeling, the feeling you know that we'll be back when the fortnight's new, and we'll have new ideas for you, and you'll have things you'll want to talk about. We will too.